In today's story, I want to share a real-world experience that slowly unfolded across a series of quiet mornings in my neighborhood, where my simple daily habit of walking the same familiar route turned into something completely unexpected. And as I narrate this journey, I want you to picture every moment as a continuous scene, stretching from one emotion to the next, just the way I lived it. I have always believed that mornings carry a special kind of calm energy, the kind that settles in before the city wakes up, and for years my routine has remained unchanged. Where I step outside, just as the sky takes on a soft blue glow, the cool air brushing across my face while I adjust my headphones and begin walking down Willow Lane, following the same winding sidewalks that I've grown to know like the back of my hand. With every passing morning, I notice the same gentle sounds, the faint rustling of leaves, the distant hum of traffic slowly coming to life, and the chirping of early birds perched along telephone wires. And as I walk past the small park with its aging wooden benches and faded swing set, I feel grounded by the rhythm of my footsteps echoing across the still quiet street that leads toward Maple Street, where the neighborhood begins waking up one house at a time. For years, nobody questioned my routine, and I simply blended into the peaceful rhythm of the neighborhood, becoming part of its background scenery just like the old oak trees and the mailboxes lining the sidewalks, until one morning, as I turned the corner toward Maple Street, I noticed a woman standing rigidly on her porch, her arms crossed tightly over her chest, her sharp gaze fixed on me in a way that didn't feel like ordinary curiosity, but something colder and more suspicious. At first, I tried to convince myself that her expression meant nothing. Maybe she was new. Maybe she was deep in thought. Maybe mornings simply weren't kind to her mood. But as the days continued, and I passed her house again and again, I realized that every morning she stood there at the exact same time, watching me with the same unblinking stare, as if my presence on the sidewalk had somehow become an unwelcome intrusion. Eventually, her silent observation turned into loud, uneasy murmurs that drifted across the lawn toward me. And even through the music playing in my headphones, I could hear fragments of her words, comments about how I passed by every single morning, how it was the same path, the same time, how it all seemed strange and suspicious, and those words clung to the air long after I'd walked past her home. One morning, I decided to break the tension and offer a simple greeting, hoping to replace suspicion with basic neighborly courtesy. So as I approached her house, I looked up and said good morning, in the calmest tone I could. But instead of responding with kindness or even neutrality, she stiffened, stepped back as if I posed a threat, and replied with an uneasy intensity, telling me, "I've got my eye on you." Words that echoed in my head for the rest of my walk like a warning. I never expected to hear over something as harmless as a morning routine. Days passed, and although part of me felt uncomfortable, I continued my walks because they were more than just exercise. They were my time to think, to breathe, to reset before the day. Until one quiet morning when a police car slowly rolled down Maple Street and came to a stop. Beside me, the officer gesturing for me to remove my headphones. While his expression suggested he already knew how unnecessary this encounter felt, he explained that someone had reported a suspicious person walking the neighborhood every morning. And as I handed over my ID to confirm that I lived nearby, I couldn't help but feel a heavy wave of embarrassment, because behind the officer, standing proudly on her porch like a self-appointed guardian, was the same woman, watching us with the expression of someone who believed she had just prevented a major threat. The officer soon returned my ID, apologized politely, and explained that sometimes people misinterpret situations, but protocol requires them to respond. And although I appreciated his professionalism, I walked away feeling exposed, judged, and quietly frustrated that something as harmless as routine could be mistaken for danger. I hoped that would be the end of it, that once she knew I was a resident, her suspicion would fade, but only till mornings later. The peaceful silence of Maple Street was shattered by the sound of sirens cutting through the air, and my heart began racing as the patrol cars pulled up beside me, lights flashing while several officers stepped out with cautious expressions. They told me another 911 call had been made, this time claiming that I had been casing houses and returning daily to watch properties. And before I could even respond, the woman appeared again, pointing toward me with dramatic urgency, insisting that I was stalking the neighborhood and hiding my intentions behind the disguise of exercise, creating an atmosphere that felt surreal and deeply unsettling. I calmly explained that I had walked the same route for years, that it was simply part of my fitness routine and peace of mind. And as the officers reviewed proof of my address and realized nothing illegal or suspicious was happening, Their tone shifted from caution to empathy, apologizing once again while assuring me that I was free to continue my walk. Yet even as they prepared to leave, the woman protested angrily, claiming that nobody walks the same route every day unless they're planning something. And in that moment, the senior officer turned to her and firmly explained that walking through a public neighborhood is not a crime, that routine behavior does not equal danger, and that fear alone cannot be treated as evidence. After they left, the street felt heavier than before, and although I completed my route, the sense of peace I once loved had been replaced with a quiet tension, making every step feel like something I had to defend rather than simply enjoy, as though the sidewalk itself had become a stage where someone else's imagination determined whether I was safe or threatening. Despite the anxiety, I chose not to change my path, because I believed that altering my routine would mean surrendering to someone else's unfounded suspicion. So I kept walking the same route, and slowly, other neighbors began noticing what had happened, approaching me with understanding and reassurance as they expressed that they had seen me walking there for years without any problem. One neighbor told me that he found the situation unfair and unnecessary. Another joked gently that if walking the same route was a crime, half the retirees in the area would be in jail. And through these conversations, I realized that while one person viewed me as a threat, many others simply recognized me as part of the neighborhood's daily rhythm. Over time, word quietly spread, and eventually I learned that the woman had a history of calling authorities over harmless situations: delivery workers, teenagers biking past her house, kids playing basketball, always describing normal life as suspicious, as if everyday activity felt like danger through the lens of her constant fear. Then one morning, I passed her house and noticed something different. No watchful stare, no crossed arms, no looming presence, only closed blinds and silence. And later I heard that the police had advised her to stop making unnecessary emergency calls, unless there was a real threat, reminding her that not every unfamiliar sight is a danger. I didn't celebrate and I didn't feel victorious. Instead, I felt a lingering sadness that someone could look at ordinary behavior and twist it into suspicion. That fear could build a wall between neighbors who never even tried to understand one another, and that a peaceful morning walk could become a symbol of misunderstanding rather than routine. Today, I still walk the same route each morning, not out of defiance, but because it represents my right to live calmly and freely in my own neighborhood. And while I now walk with a deeper awareness that not everyone views the world with trust or openness, I also carry the reassurance that most people do, people who wave, smile, and understand that routine is not threat, but simply part of being human. And as the sun rises each day and the world slowly awakens, I remind myself that while one fearful voice once turned my ordinary walk into a 911 call, it also revealed the resilience of quiet confidence, the strength of remaining grounded in who you are, and the truth that life continues, step by steady step, along the same familiar route that still belongs to me.